Thank you, Kev Mo, and for bringing us in with Stand Up and Be Strong. And we're in Chicago, but a few of us are in Mexico. And we're here with another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James, and co-host Katy Hogan is actually with us down there in Cancun. And we got some great guests. We got Justin Kaufman coming on to talk about all things Chicago. We've got Adam James doing a progressive sports report from LA. And we have the filmmaker John Anderson, who's going to talk a little bit about the late, great Sam Lay, who passed this week, as did Jimmy Johnson. So get ready for this show. Get ready to roll. Here we go. Good morning, Katy. How you doing down there?
I'm at Girls Just Wanna weekend, the Brandy Carlisle sponsored 4-day little women-run Woodstock.
Extravaganza.
It's quite wonderful. And I saw Sheryl Crow last night. I saw Tanya Tucker and Brandy the night before, which who knew? Tanya was so flipping great. And I did a water slide yesterday, which was pretty fun. Because you're in.
She's breaking up a little bit. And we may have lost her, but stick around. And we will go to, let's talk to Luis down there in Mexico. He's over in Veracruz. Good morning to you, brother. I think you're on mute. Now you're on.
Morning, Michael. I'm right here, ready. I'm wonderful, enjoying the lovely tropical winter that is February in Veracruz. Very well-known place for incredibly very high winds from the north hitting town right now. But it's a nice refresher from the heat that comes from most of the year.
That's great. And we have a new person with us on our team, Emilio Davis. Show us your face there, Emilio. He's here in Chicago, as am I. And when Katy's down there in Mexico, I have to deal with the Facebook, Zoom, all that stuff that I'm not real adept at. I might be a bit of a Luddite, but we're trying, and that's why we have all these people on the screen helping me out. And so far, so good. Emilio, welcome to the Heartland team. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here, Michael.
All right, Katy, we're going to try you one more time. What do you got planned today besides a test, a COVID test, so you can come back to cold Chicago? It's 11 degrees.
Oh, God. I'm going to see some absolutely wonderful music this afternoon on the stage, in front of which most of the audience is floating in floaties in the water. The floaty culture here is out of this world. Here's a drink floaty. And I said to this lady I was standing behind yesterday, I said, do you know you have a flamingo eating your back? And she said, yeah, that's my drink coaster. So it's wild. And then tonight is the big final, and they do ladies from the 80s. So people actually bring costumes of like 80s stuff, like leg warmers and God knows what. And when I heard about it, I said, hey, I'm still wearing clothes that I wore in the 80s. What's costume about it? Anyway, it's fabulous here. And everyone is just totally joyful. Even the people who are working, they're pretty happy to have, 5,000 women around them too. Go figure.
Well, that's great to hear. I was in Cancun once, kind of in the middle of the night, and some guy gave us a place to sleep in a barracks. That's just when they were building up the place. Did you see much of Mexican life while you're there, Kate?
Heck no. I landed in the airport, got in a bus. They took us to Hard Rock Resort. This is a place, those of you who know me, I have never been, would never be, but thanks to my girlfriends, I am. The only part of Mexican culture I know are all the Mexicans surrounding me that I talk to. But
okay, well, you have a great time, and I hope you test negative so you can come home. But if you can't, you'll be hooking up over there in Veracruz with Luis.
You betcha.
Luis, you've been back home for a while now since you graduated from the great Loyola University. How about telling us how life is for you down there?
It's wonderful. Mostly, it's been an incredible change. I never expected that I would suffer culture shock going back home, personally. But after being in Chicago for 4 years, and then before that in St. Louis for another 4, coming back home really was a shift, an incredible tone shift. But I think we're finally adapting back into my home country, and not only that, but my hometown. Veracruz culture is now seeping little by little into my being, and it feels nice. It feels refreshing to be back here, to be back again with this culture that I have missed for such a long time.
Well, it's great to have this report from all the sunny places that you two are occupying at this time. I'm going to switch us now to a little bit of news.
I'm going to say goodbye. There's some
Bye-bye,
sun
Kate.
that
Good to
needs
have
to
you.
be caught out here. So I'm going to go catch
Okay,
some sun.
Well, Katy has definitely reported on the good things that are going on for her. For me, I had great luck with the U.S. mail this week. We got a new copy of The Sun, which I will show you all briefly. This is a great magazine for people to get. It's called The Sun. It comes out of, I think, North Carolina. And you will love it if you don't already have it. And I saw somewhere an article on this fellow, Roy de Carava. And I ordered 2 books from Amazon. And the first one that came was a tiny book with the pictures of his and text by Langston Hughes, which is wonderful, but the pictures aren't really very visible unless you got a magnifying glass. But this book is just filled with wonderful photos. So I had never heard of him before, Roy de Carava. Check him out. There was an article somewhere, probably, I don't remember where I saw it. Given that for the good things, on a more negative front, but also good that it's coming to people's attention, Amnesty International has formally accused Israel of being an apartheid state, subjecting Palestinians to a system founded on depossession and exclusion. Now, of course, the US and Israel have denounced the report. On the military front, we all are paying a serious attention to what's going on with Russia and the Ukraine. I was in the Ukraine once with Athletes United for Peace, but back here on the general front, the US Army has begun to, this is our COVID report, US Army has begun to discharge non-vaccinated soldiers. As of January 26th, 96% of active duty soldiers in the Army were vaccinated. Those who have asked for a medical exemption or religious accommodations are temporarily exempt from the vaccination requirement, and their requests are being reviewed. Moving on down the line. Those of you who are regular listeners to the show know that we kept you up on the Amazon organizing efforts in Alabama. And we did report that the National Labor Relations Board was re-looking into that. And now what I've got here is Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama were allowed for a revote or on becoming the first Amazon warehouse in the US to unionize. We'll keep you posted on how that's going. Also, we've been talking a lot about Starbucks and the number of places around the country that are trying to organize, including Chicago. And I believe that number has grown to about 52. We'll try in the next couple of weeks to have a more detailed labor report on what we can learn from labor struggles of the past, as well as what's going on around the country new and how things are going. On the Chicago front, Jesse Sharkey has announced, he's the president of the Chicago Teachers Union. He has announced that he will not be running for re-election. He is confident that there are many capable people in the ranks of the Chicago Teachers Union, and he wants to go back to the classroom. We shall keep you posted on that too. And as many of you in Chicago and even nationally know, because I've seen it on the national news, the police officer Van Dyke, who shot Laquan McDonald 16 times and went off to jail, he has been, I think, moved to a halfway house, and following all the rules from his second-degree murder, he's getting let out on probation. And of course, there's quite a strong reaction from activists and the family. And yesterday being Thursday, because we are recording on Friday for tomorrow, Saturday, a number of people were arrested downtown. Let's see what else I got. I think that's what I got for our news. We're going to get ready with a little musical break. I'm not sure what we're going to play, but we're going to play it, and we'll be right back with more live from the Heartland here on the left end of your dial at WLUW 88.7 every Saturday morning from 9 to 10. It's also streamed on youtube.com. No, excuse me, it's streamed on WLUW.org. And then later you'll get to see it at youtube.com/Heartland Media. So we'll be right back here. Listen to a little music. We got our first guest, Justin Kaufman, coming on. See you in a minute. Welcome back to more Live from the Heartland here on WLUW 88.7. And we're really glad to be bringing in our next guest, a fellow named Justin Kaufman. He's a longtime Chicago radio host and commentator. He is working currently with Axios, as well as he has a new show on Twitch, which is new to me, called Chicago for Real on Twitch TV. So good morning to you, Justin. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. How are you, buddy?
Good. Justin has this new show, and he invited me to be on it last week, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I first got to know you when Katy, Hogan, and I owned and operated the Heartland Cafe up in Rogers Park. And we had a little theater there called the Heartland Studio Theater, which was used to be a yoga space that we had. And then some Heartland employees started putting on plays, and you came along.
Yeah.
And you were one of the first tenants we had with a group called Schadenfreude. So tell us a little bit about the old days, how we got to know each other, and what you've been doing for the last 50 years.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that was the late 90s, right? That was like right when I remember someone walked by and saw the theater, one of the guys from Schadenfreude, Adam. And he's like, this place is great. And he brought us up there, and we're like, this is perfect, because we were looking to put on our own independent sketch comedy show. And we came to you and you said, good to go. And the only thing I remember about the first couple of days is you had somebody already in there that was like doing a show. I forgot his name, but then we found out he was kind of sleeping in there. Like that was, I don't know if you ever knew that, but this guy was like, just like set up shop, and he's like, this will be my home. So he was a little shocked that you had rented it out to somebody else. But yeah, we had a great run there. I had a great time at the Heartland Cafe. Schadenfreude had a good run. We got a ton of positive reviews back doing that show. I remember the Reader had us, or the New City had us as a top show of 1999. And it was all at the Heartland studio. People would line up. They'd line up because there's only like 40, 45 seats to see us every night do new shows, at 10 o'clock. So it was always fun to hang out with you and hang out with the Heartland and be a part of that Rogers Park community for a couple of years.
And then you were, for a long time, you were with WBEZ, and then you went with, what's the other one? WGN. WGN. I got to talk to you on the air both times. And now you're working lately, I just sort of discovered it. I'm a little, like I talked about earlier, I'm kind of a Luddite on some fronts. And all of a sudden, I've been looking at Axios every morning, and very pleasantly surprised to all of a sudden see you. And I think Monica Eng is on there with you, and you do a report. Tell us about how that came to be and what you're doing.
Yeah. I right at the pandemic, I essentially didn't renew my contract at WGN. So I started doing some freelance stuff, and I caught on with Axios does a national podcast out of DC. And so I was on that team for a couple of months, and then they decided to, they do like different cities. So Axios has Atlanta, Axios, Tampa, Axios, Charlotte. And they were going to expand to Chicago. So Monica and I reached out and said, hey, Monica's been at the Trib, the Sun Times, BEZ. She's been everywhere. I worked, as you said, BEC and GN, and we said we want to write this. It's essentially an email newsletter that goes out every morning. It's less than 1,000 words, and you write probably 4 or 5 stories, and you really get to the heart of it. If you're familiar with Axios, they're a national brand. They do that kind of style of journalism at the national level, like they call it smart brevity, where they don't mess around. They don't do anything that's like more than 400 words. They're just like get in, and the idea is they hire people who have experience, who like can get to the heart of the matter in the story, so you don't just waste words. And that's what we do, and we do it every day, Monday through Friday, and it's actually a ton of fun. And you can sign up for it and it's a free newsletter you get every morning. And we also, write stories that are coming out of Chicago for the network, for the national crew out in DC.
So what time do you wake up in the morning to put this together? Or are you staying up late the night before? How much time you putting in every day on it?
It's a day. It's a long day, because you end up most of the day, like today is a good example. I'll be working on Mondays. So you already kind of have an idea, just like, producing a talk show, what, you're going to do on Monday. You start writing it, editing will come in the afternoon, and then you have to get up at 5-ish, and then you work the copy edits, and it comes out at 6:30 in the morning. So it's a weird schedule where you're kind of already did your work, and then you got to get up again and do it again, like, if that makes sense. So I don't even know how many hours a day I'm working, because there's naps in between. That's the only problem. You want to be as fresh and as immediate as possible, but short of getting up at 2:00 in the morning and working on it till it launches at 6, you got to find ways to be available at all parts of the day.
Well, you cover it all. I mean, you got the heavy and the light.
Yeah, that's the idea.
It's Friday morning recording for Saturday's show, and then forever on the YouTube. I didn't get to look at it this morning because I couldn't find my invite I had sent to you guys, and I'm. So what did you cover today? Give us a little example of what's in.
Monica had an awesome piece about school lunches and the contracts for how CPS and other schools in the state of Illinois get their school lunches. There's a state law right now that they're trying to change, but there's a state law on the books that says that the state has to take the lowest bidder. Like, anyone who comes in, they're like, it doesn't matter, it's taxpayer money, you got to take the lowest bidder. And that has led to pretty crappy food. There was a teacher in Peoria, I mean, that's where we're at. There's a teacher in Peoria who went to his social media and he showed some of the images, and he got fired. Like, the Peoria school district didn't like that, and they fired him. But he pointed out, this is not edible, or it doesn't look right, or everything about it. And there's a lawmaker down in Springfield who's trying to change it to say, what are we actually doing by saying lowest bidder? We're saying that the money is more important than actual nutrition and making sure that our kids are fed, and that's something that most states, I think it's 48 states, don't do that. They take the best bid. But Illinois and another state, I don't know what it is, are the only ones that do lowest, and that's it. So you're going to get lowest quality if it's the lowest bid. So that's a story she did today. We also did historic photos of blizzards to show the difference. So we had some great archival footage from Getty. Getty has a collection of all these. We have Axios has the access to Getty images. So I can go through there, and I just put in 1967 Chicago, and it popped up a bunch of awesome old black and white shots of, buses stalled out. And I put in January 14th, 1979, and it popped up all these photos of snow that was up to the, top. And I put in 2011, and it popped up all these photos of Lakeshore Drive. And so we just kind of said, if you want to see what a blizzard looks like, here's the aftermath of those storms as opposed to the one we just had. So it's that kind of stuff we did this week.
I remember the blizzard, I think 67.
Mm-hmm.
I was, ahead of it, rushing towards Chicago with a couple of guys from Uptown in the Joint Community Union. And we couldn't go any further than Gary, and we got stuck in a hotel on the floor with like 100 other people. And there was this old blues singer who'd been on the bus on his way to Chicago for the University of Chicago Folk Festival, Skip James. And I asked him to play some music, and these young African Americans with their boom boxes didn't like it. They turned them up real loud.
Oh, no.
I finally said, wait a minute, this is an older guy, but he's really kind of famous and important. Anyhow, that's my story from then. A little bit later, we got back home to Chicago and kept digging. What else did you cover?
We're working on a story for Monday about how Minneapolis does snow removal.
Oh,
and
good.
Yeah, and because Chicago has been, this is kind of an antiquated way they do it, where we just wait for plows to come through and then they plow everybody in and then we dig out and then the snow goes back on the street. Everything about it, we're looking at in what they do in Minneapolis, and all the residents pitch in, is that you move your car from one side of the street to a parking lot to somewhere else. They come in and they at a designated time and they do every side street on one side. Then the next day they do the other side, just like you might do in, parking restrictions in New York, things like that. But it works. And then they don't have dibs. They don't have any issues like that because the city takes care of it. But Chicago, because of whatever reasons, has tried this a couple times. This is what we've learned. In 1979, which is when Michael Bilandic famously messed that up, the reason it got messed up is because he tried to do the Minneapolis way and Chicago just said no. So essentially, there's a little bit it's more than that. Here's what happened, which actually is fantastic Chicago story. He essentially wanted to change the way that we do it. He asked residents to go park in Park District and school parking lots for the day so they could do it, but then failed to dig those parking lots out. So when people showed up to put their cars in there, it wasn't plowed. So they couldn't get in. So it was mass. Think about the pandemonium that would cause if everyone's going to a parking lot, yet Streets and Sand forgot to do or didn't get the message. And that's why Michael Bilandic actually lost that mayorship. The second is in 1999, 2000, they tried it again. Like Daley tried it with his Streets and Sand guy at the time. And there was a lot of confusion about it. And at the end of the day, Chicagoans either didn't get enough notice or just didn't care. Like we were supposed to move our cars and nobody did. And so then there was problems with that 1999 storm where, people didn't get plowed out and things like that. So we're looking at that story for Monday.
I'm glad you filled us in on that because I saw it somewhere. It might have been you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Or somebody made a comment. They'd been in Minnesota and they did it so much better. And I couldn't, it's one of those things in my older age, I couldn't remember where I had read it. But I'm glad you filled this in because that's great.
Yeah.
Now, what led to this time you coming on live from the Heartland was your invite to me to be on your Twitch.
Yeah, right on.
So tell us about your new show, what Twitch is, what your show is, how do people get it, and what you do.
Sure. Twitch is a notoriously historic gaming platform. So a lot of kids, when you hear this, the phenomenon of kids watching other people play video games, Twitch is what that is. So gamers get on Twitch and they broadcast live video and you can watch them play a video game. That's where it came from. It's actually a pretty popular channel for that. During the pandemic, a lot of music venues, and you see this in radio and other places, they gravitated there when you couldn't have live audiences. So you saw at first the Hideout was there for a little bit. Theater companies are there because they're putting out shows, Improv, Second City, things like that. So at the time, about a year ago, I got together with about 6 or 7 creatives in Chicago, really fantastic people from Second City, from other places, to create an ensemble that would do work there. So we've had all sorts of people from Susan Messing from Fame from IO and Second City and The Annoyance to Lisa Beasley, who right now is doing the great impression of the mayor. Mayor Lightfoot, if you haven't seen that on TikTok and Instagram, she does a Lori Lightfoot impression. Shantira Jackson, who's actually a staff writer was on Amber Ruffin's show and also Big Mouth on Netflix. She's got a deal right now, production deal with Seth Meyers. So it's like there's a lot of really cool people that are involved in this. And when we have an idea, we have a platform. So we create sort of Zoom programming. So tonight, for instance, Friday night, this airs on Saturday, but on Friday nights, Susan Messing and Rachel Mason and Neil Dedande and Rich Sohn do improv. I do a show once a month called No Wristbands Required, which is what you were on, where every month I will do 1 hour just on one Chicago neighborhood. What makes it tick, what's the cool areas, what's the storefronts, some history, and we had Rogers Park was the last one we just did, which you were on last week. And I also do a show every Monday that's called The Chicago Game Show, which you should come on. Which is like a Jeopardy for Chicago, but it's dumb. It's not your Jeffrey Bear WTTW. Let's talk about the Chicago fire. It's more like, Dennis Farina old style commercials. Like it's that kind of stuff where we're talking a little bit more about pop culture Chicago, and it's on Monday nights. And the address is easy. It's just twitch.com/Chicago 4 real. That's it.
Well, Yeah, I went on. I didn't sign up for the app yesterday because of the gaming thing. I didn't realize what it was. I said, I'm not sure this is what
You
I
don't have
want
to
to
sign
hit.
up. You can watch it on your computer. You can watch it on your phone. You don't have to sign up for anything.
Send me the link to the one I was on.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I wanted to ask you too, though, was how many of those have you done, the Chicago for Real so far?
Well, those no wristbands that we did, the new neighborhood ones.
No wristband.
I think this was our 8th, 7th. So we started with Lincoln Park. Then we did Hyde Park. We did Logan Square. We did Bridgeport, Lincoln Square. I think I'm missing one here. And then Rogers Park. The next one is Little Village.
Let me ask you, Justin Kaufman, our Chicago, not only a comic theatrical guy, but a radio host of great notoriety. In your travels around Chicago, as a longtime Chicagoan, give us what you see going on and what you think. Like some of the, maybe the good, the bad, even something else. Because you're going to these neighborhoods, you're talking to people in depth. What would you like to share with people? We got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think what I notice, I think Chicago's got an energy to it that surpasses any challenges that it has to face in pandemic or violence, whatever it might be.
Okay.
That you'll see a ton of. I can't stand when people want to politicize or do anything about the things that are bad about Chicago, because a great example. We talked about Rogers Park in the 90s. That was a different time, and we lived it and we enjoyed it, and we culturally were satisfied, and we all were a part of a community. And there was a ton of violence and there was a ton of crime. There was a lot going on at that time in 1998 in Chicago, right? I mean, that's something that people need to recognize, especially when a Facebook group from my neighborhood says, they can't believe somebody got carjacked on the corner. You're like, well, that's a part of living in a big city where you have millions of people that live on top of each other. I think the bad right now is that I don't think we yet understand the impact of this pandemic. You will go to places like Rogers Park is a good example. I think of like Edgewater, where right there on Bryn Mawr, how many businesses have actually gone out of business. And you see this all over the place. And we're kind of like a lobster in a boiling pot because it's gradual. So, that we're not in lockdown, so we're not paying attention to what's happening to these businesses. But if you did a snapshot in 2019 and you did a snapshot again in 2022, you might see a different Chicago and you wouldn't even know it. You'd see all these businesses that have closed or went under. Every day you see an announcement that somebody says, hey, after where I live, there's a toy store that everybody counts on that's like maybe 2 blocks down that was like just made the announcement saying we can't do it anymore. And so I think that is something we should pay attention to as a city, that how we look and how we feel and how we work and how we spend money is going to change. And we may not be paying attention to that because we're working from home or possibly only going to where we need to go because of the pandemic. You're not recognizing that there's big swaths on the south side, west side, and north side that are all changing right in front of our eyes.
Well, that's good to fill us in on that stuff and give us some hope. Okay, this is good. Let me ask you, we're going to do a little sports segment next with Adam James from LA.
Great.
And you got any little sports commentary? You rooting for the White Sox, the Cubs?
Love the White Sox. I'm a White Sox guy. Yeah, I'm a White Sox guy. I'm bummed about the lockout because I was really hoping that we'd have a fun off season of like free agents and things like that. Hopefully they got that reconciled and we can add some. I think they still need to, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds. I think they need another starting pitcher and I think they need a right fielder, but hopefully they know what's happening, because when we got to the playoffs, which was very excited, you recognize really quick that we may not be ready as the Astros just steamrolled us and scored run after run after run. That was not a good experience for a White Sox fan to think we had such a great year to get to the playoffs and be like, oh, we are not even competing with the best. Like we're not even close. So that to me is what I'm worried about.
Thanks a lot for coming on, and let's go to a Sox game together.
I love it. Thanks, Mike. Good to see you, man.
See you, Justin Kaufman. Thanks a lot. Okay, you are listening or watching live from the Heartland on WLUW887, WLUW.org, YouTube.com/Heartland Media, podcasts on Spotify and Google. We're going to play a little tune by Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson passed away this week, as did Sam Lay. We're going to talk about Sam a little bit later in the show, but let's take a little break from the album Barroom Preacher. And I think the song is Little by Little, and we'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial or wherever you're getting the info from. Okay, we're back. We're back with more Live from the Heartland. We're recording it on Friday, the 4th of February in the year 2022 for broadcast and streaming and beyond starting Saturday, the 5th. And usually we wait till the end of the show for the sports report, like when you used to go to a newspaper and you had to go to the back. But we're putting this next guy in the middle. The next guy happens to be my cousin Adam James, who I first really got to know when he was playing football for Northwestern back in the day. So from Southern California, get ready for a Live from the Heartland sports report. How you doing, Adam?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much for having me here. It's great to see you.
And how is the weather out there in Los Angeles area?
It's been quite cold for us lately. Not as cold as you're having, though.
No, it certainly isn't. Let me get started with, I watch a lot of sports, and I know that there's Olympics going on. We've got a Super Bowl next week. We've got a coaching controversy and diversity questions in the NFL. The Australian Open is over. Basketball, both pro and collegiate, is full swing.
Yes.
We don't know what's happening with baseball. What do you got for us that you think is important and you want to share?
Well, first off, I want to take time to recognize this is, of course, African American History Month, Black History Month. And I was very honored to have been a player under the very first African American head coach in Big Ten history, Dennis Green. And Denny was a fantastic man and a great coach. He had a very interesting story. He was part of Bill Walsh's system. He was an assistant coach on the 49ers when they won the Super Bowl the first time with Joe Montana. And he was the running backs coach. And he got the opportunity after that to coach at Northwestern as their head coach. And at the time, nobody called it the West Coast offense. The term was the Bill Walsh system. And Denny was a master of it. And he came to Northwestern, and he was the one who turned around that program. After years of difficulties, he was the one that brought in an NFL system, a dynamic, new, cutting-edge offense. And he changed the entire culture at Northwestern. And it would be really wonderful for Northwestern and the Big Ten Conference to recognize Denny. Under the circumstance, everything that's been going on lately, it would be really neat to do something for Denny Green and maybe bring back some of his great players like Chris Hinton and Curtis Duncan and Steve Tasker, and have them be there, Tasker, to be there to recognize him. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, Denny Green. Well, so what do you think about what's going on with the coaching questions in the NFL right now?
Well, it's interesting. You and I texted immediately when this came out. And my first comment was, change is coming. But then I followed that up with, but it's not coming fast enough, and it needs to hurry up. Because honestly, in the history of the NFL, there's only been 21 African-American head coaches, ever. And a lot of those men that served in those positions are gentlemen who took the job under duress. They were asked to step in as the new head coach when the previous head coach was fired. A lot of those 21 men were not given a real job of being head coach and the real opportunity to build a program. So we want to see more of that. And, it's very unfortunate what's happened with Brian Flores, and what's being brought to light is not good. But
tell our listeners what happened.
Well, there was a NFL head coach named Brian Flores from the Miami Dolphins who was fired at the end of the season, despite having a winning record, despite having 2 winning records in a row for a team that had not had that in a decade. And then he was let go. And it was surprising. And then since then, he's been a candidate for a couple of jobs, but didn't get it. And at this time, this year, there have been no new African-American head coaches hired. And there have been several head coaches hired. So the pattern is repeating. And that is, so Brian was so frustrated that he's started a class action lawsuit of racism against the entire NFL. And he's also named 3 teams specifically, including his former employer, the Miami Dolphins. So again, the real thing that's happening here is whether or not his case will be victorious, and whether that will be the impetus of change. The important thing is that change has to happen, and we need to work towards that. And I think today, and I thought, well, what would facilitate that change? What would make that? And I hate to say it, but it comes back to the players, you know, and I hate to put it on the NFLPA, the Players Association, because they have enough to fight for every time they go into negotiations. That on the table, when they go in to negotiate, that the NFL needs to be more progressive and more active in hiring African Americans into coaching positions, into leadership, administrative positions. That I feel will have an impact. And it's because the NFLPA is predominantly African American, because the players are predominantly African American. So let's see them put some pressure. Let's see the NFL owners start making some changes. Like to see it.
Well, when all this broke in the news, the NFL, of course, talks about its commitment to diversity.
Yes.
But how do you see that? And it's sort of a false claim in the light of Colin Kaepernick. Remind people what happened to him and how this all fits in.
Well, you know, Colin Kaepernick's situation is complex. He was a very good quarterback. Some would say great. Others felt that he was limited in his play. And when he put himself into a controversial position, owners felt that his level of play wasn't creating. But Colin had an important message, and people needed to hear it. And he sacrificed an NFL career, certainly a portion of it, in order to get that message across. And I respect that tremendously. And, you know, the one thing I will say about the NFL is it's kind of like law enforcement and the military. There's obviously a lot of entrenched, systematic, inappropriate, and sometimes even illegal activity. But I believe that there is a commitment to being better. There is a commitment to the ideal. And so the NFL, I truly believe, will make changes. And in fact, I thought about that as well. And leading up to this is the NFL is probably the one sports league that has been willing, well, them and the NBA, willing to make changes. Their history be damned. We don't care about the records of yesterday. We want our game better tomorrow. We want to be safer and be more.
There we go. You're back?
Did I freeze?
Yeah, you froze. Say that last sentence.
It's the new technology. I was just saying that the NFL and the NBA have been willing to make changes, and we'll hopefully continue to see those.
You got any hope for the baseball season? Or let me ask first, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
Oh, yes. Super Bowl this year. I truly believe it's kind of a unique dynamic because you've got a Midwest Cinderella story, the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that many people never thought would ever get close to this. And they've just got an exciting, dynamic team filled with young, terrific players. The wide receiver and the running back are spectacular. The quarterback obviously is a magic man. It'll be fun to see that Midwest team bring some toughness to the Super Bowl. And on the flip side, you've got that glitter of the Los Angeles Rams, loaded with a lot of star players here and there. They, for those of you who don't know, the Rams traded away many of their future draft picks in order to fill this team with a lot of veteran players that are a little bit older now, but are terrific. And so that Hollywood versus the Midwest.
Okay, that's a good one. But before I let you go, Adam James, give me a little take on your take on Joe Rogan and the Joe Rogan show, because you and I had some interesting conversation about it.
Yes, well, you know, I'll attempt to be brief, but Joe's a really interesting person. You know, Joe Rogan is a comedian. He started his career coming to Hollywood to be a comedian, and he had a lot of success. He was signed by Disney, and he had a lot of opportunities. But he's also a passionate athlete, and he loves martial arts. And he got involved with the martial arts scene here in Los Angeles, and he was hired to be the commentator for UFC long before it became the major sport it is today. In fact, Joe deserves some credit for bringing credibility to that sport and helping usher it towards the new level of professionalism that we see in the UFC. And of course, he's taken that opportunity to increase his
UFC. That's fighting, ultimate fighting, kind of.
Correct. The ultimate fighting, the MMA. And again, now it's kind of an accepted sport in many circles. It's still some
hard to watch.
question it. Mm-hmm. But ESPN puts it on the their website and all over their commercials all the time because, of course, they're doing business with them. But regardless, I really respect that Joe has built an amazing career for himself, and he's been a part of some other terrific organizations growing and helping people and feeding that great stuff. I don't appreciate that he's used the opportunity that he's been given, this platform, to give others a chance to, share misinformation, which is quite clear. And my other concern is that, in opportunities for him to bring greater clarity, rather than saying, which would be really great, hey, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a regular Joe trying to figure this stuff out. And here's what I'm thinking. But oftentimes he comes off a little bit more like, I'm an authority on this topic. And I really wish he would take a little bit more of an everyman's approach and just say, hey, I'm here to help my listeners get more information. I'm sure if he heard me say that, he'd say, that's exactly what I'm doing, buddy. So just shut the hell up. But I'm allowed to have my observation, and my feeling is that he's missed opportunities to be a little bit clearer about where he truly stands. And I'll add one more thing, and that's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who, again, I have tremendous respect for. He and Joe are both great guys as far as their accomplishments in life, but I'm concerned with how sometimes they have these opportunities to share information and they just send a message that, to me, is hurting people. So what The Rock did the other day, Dwayne Johnson, is he sent a message out to Joe Rogan saying, hey, buddy, good job. And he was basically saying it to Joe Rogan's quote unquote apology. Joe's apology wasn't really a true apology in the sense that he acknowledged that he has shared misinformation and he's giving people a platform that really have no business sharing. So as a result, The Rock's tweet began trending on the news as The Rock backs Joe Rogan. I don't know if that was The Rock's intent, but I said to my son when I was talking to him about The Rock, because we love that guy and we think he's awesome. And I said, what would have been really cool is if he said, hey, buddy, I really like you. You're my friend. I don't like what you did. I don't like how you gave misinformation. I don't like how you gave a platform to a quack doctor. But I like that you made an apology. A little half-assed, but I like that you're trying to get better. So keep going. That would have been a cool message from The Rock to Joe Rogan. But again, I'm not him. He has a right to say what he wants. Free speech.
Well, cousin, it's really good to see you. We'll have you back on the show in a month or so. All you people who are listening or watching, whatever it may be, we're going to take you out, or we're going to take a little break, and we're going to go out with Maggie's Farm by Sam Lay, and we'll be talking with John Anderson, who has made a film, Sam Lay Blues Land, and we'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Thank you, Sam Lay, Maggie's Farm, a Dylan tune. And Maggie's Farm is, Sam Lay did play with Dylan when Dylan was at Newport and went from folk to electric rock and took a lot of heat, but we've been loving it ever since. And with that said, we want to bring in our next guest, John Anderson, a filmmaker. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Michael.
Am I correct that you were on the show earlier with your film about the Paul Butterfield Blues Band and Paul Butterfield called Horn from the Heart?
That's right. That probably had to be 2 or 3 years ago.
I love that movie. And I used to go see, as you and I were talking before we got back on here, I used to go to the Blue Flame at 39th and Drexel and see Paul Butterfield. And they used to have a shake dancer. It was quite a scene. I don't know if Sam was playing with him then or not, but why don't you tell us a little bit about Sam Lay? And he passed this week, and he's gotten a lot of accolades throughout his life. And he was a wonderful human being. I remember him at the Heartland one time when I think Corky was on the show. Fill us in a little bit, brother.
Well, he enriched a lot of lives, didn't he? Mine included. He was a light. He was a force. He was, unafraid. He was strong. It wasn't an act. I never saw him get stage fright. I would like to hear of anyone who ever saw him display that. He was always ready to go. And he brought that to his music. He brought that adventurousness, that sense of humor. He brought it to his drum style, if there is such a thing, and there is. He proved that there is, and that's what makes him one of a kind.
I think there was a quote last night that was sent to you from Bob Dylan. You want to share that?
Yes, Bob says Sam Lay is the greatest blues drummer of all time. What more do you need to say than that? They had a relationship, of course. It started that day, I guess it was July 25th, 1965 at Newport, but it continued after that. Sam made an impression after that Newport show, and Bob brought him into the studio, and he played on the session, a good number of sessions, much of which is released in the box set that Bob put out called The Cutting Edge, where all of those recording sessions are. And a lot of the stuff was released, and you know, as with everybody else, he made a mark on Bob. And Bob, because of that and because of his relationship, I think, with Bloomfield, which is a great story, he's always been so generous to us as we make our Chicago blues films, and that extended to this quote.
Tell us how you met Sam Lay.
I
Do you
met him.
remember?
Yes, I do. Of course I do. It was March, I barely remember it. It was March 19th or 20th, 2008. Okay. I guess it was the rehearsals for the Chicago Blues Reunion show at Park West then. I don't think I'd met Sam before then. Maybe in passing I had, but you know, that was when he made his first mark. And then it wasn't long after that, he made his mark on my buddy Michael Prussian, who came to a Chicago Blues Reunion rehearsal and witnessed Sam. And Mike is a filmmaker, and he said, we need to make this film about Sam Lay. And that was the incentive for that, the impetus for it. And you can see it now. It's on most of the streaming services. It's on Amazon and iTunes and Apple, and you can find it just about anywhere. You know, we tried to explore Sam's entire oeuvre and life, but you could never do that in a 70-minute, 80-minute film.
Well, give us a little hint about what's in the film, some highlights that people might want to get ready for as they go to the services to get it.
Well, you learn a lot of things, you know, about his past, of course. His father was a banjo player, a country banjo player, and Sam had country roots. And Sam said that his father was the first Black man to perform on the Grand Ole Opry stage. I think he said he was part of Roy Acuff's band, but I might have that wrong. Oh, so many things. He had a wild and woolly childhood in Birmingham, Alabama. You know, when you look like Sam, you can't help being a ladies' man, and that creates its own issues and advantages. And so Sam certainly, you know, as he was growing up, the way I hear it, after gigs, and even after he came to town here and he was playing with Wolf and Muddy, these larger than life characters, the ladies tended to gather around Sam during the intermissions. You know, and nonetheless, he had a beautiful family, a wonderful wife, Liz, and 3 beautiful children. And I just feel, you know, really lucky to have been a part of their lives.
Well, you know, why don't you fill in, while we got the opportunity, fill in your listeners on your other film, Horn from the Heart, because that one was pretty neat too. And then I'll ask you about more films. It's
about Paul Butterfield, the great Chicago harmonica player. It covers his life and career, the highs and the lows, and so many generous contributors, including Bob Dylan and Jim Kweskin and Jeff Moldauer, Maria Moldauer, Marshall Chess. Oh, I can't even remember all of the people, and all the Chicago great blues guys, Nick Gravenitis and Barry Goldberg and Corky Siegel. And it played around the festivals, and now it's available everywhere, and it's doing great. People in these COVID times, I think, are watching music documentaries more than ever. John, how did you get into making films? Dad brought home an 8mm camera, like everybody else, you know, like Sam. Let's not forget Sam's 8mm camera. Yeah, you said Sam made some films. He bought it for his wife around the Christmas of '60, maybe, and got some color film for it and learned how to use it. And I don't believe she ever saw the thing again. He took it with him on the road and everywhere that he played, and shot this silent 8mm film that was so integral to many of the films that I've made. You know, you've got Muddy, you've got Wolf, you've got Otis Rush, you've got the real people who loved Sam enough to let him put a camera in their face. So it's really an unbelievable glimpse into, the blues scene, the Chicago blues scene, and just life in Chicago during those times, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I became
what
a
do you got
filmmaker. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I only know of the two films now, and I'm looking forward to watching Bluesland. I did watch the trailer early this morning. What do you got in the works? What's in the pipeline, and what other films have you made that you want to share a little info on?
Well, you should go watch Brian Wilson Presents Smile. I've done a handful of films with Brian, and that's my favorite, and it's on YouTube. You can watch that one for free. It's just Brian at his pinnacle of performance. And there's a program you can probably find on YouTube too called Brian Wilson on Tour. Those are two that I like. I'm working on a film now about the Manhattan Transfer that is going to get done this year, the vocal group, and their 50th anniversary is coming up this year, and they've got a big box set release, 50th, I think, releasing all their stuff plus a new CD. So I'm working on that, and I'm working on a Brian Wilson reissue and lots of other little bits and pieces. I'm working on getting a streaming program off the air or off the ground that is comprised of my film outtakes that nobody ever gets to see.
Well, you're keeping busy. Are you here in Chicago?
Yeah.
North side, south side, west side?
West side.
Okay. And what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? That's a great question. What do I do? I used to do a lot of things for fun. Can I get back to you on that? Oh, I listen to music all the time. That's what I do. I listen to music and I make music. I'm a musician. I've got a band called the Cleaning Ladies that's been around since '78. So we're always doing stuff. So yeah, music is pretty much what I do for fun.
Well, we want to thank you for sharing this information. And how about I hit you up for one more memory of something that people might want to know about Sam Lay?
Well, do you want to hear about the time I lost him?
Yeah.
Probably about 5 years ago, they showed Sam Lay in Bluesland down at the University of Illinois at Champaign, and I drove him down, and we were going to speak afterwards, and he had a gig the next night down there with Corky, so he was just going to stay in Champaign. So we drove down, and that was just such a fun, of course, ride. It's always good to be alone with Sam, and we did the show, and the next day, all I was supposed to do was take care of Sam and hand him off to Corky. Okay, doesn't sound that difficult, does it? And they were coming down from Chicago, and they were going to get there in time for me to get going. Well, I don't know if they were delayed or if I had to leave early, but an hour before they got there, I knew I had to go. And I went into Sam's room and I said, Sam, do me, if there's ever one favor you do for me in this life, just for the next hour, don't go anywhere, which is hard for Sam. Sam is a mover and he's a shaker. And he put on his old man routine that he's so good at. You know, he's lying on his bed with his muscle tee on and just trying to look tuckered out and saying, oh, I don't even know if I'll ever walk again or something like that. You know, like, of course he's not going anywhere. I thank him. I look in his eyes. I think I can tell he's telling me the truth. Get on the road. 60 minutes later, my phone rings and it's the nightmare phone call I had been dreading. It's Holly and Corky. Where's Sam? He's in his room. He's not in his room. Listen, we're knocking on his door. He's not. They gave us the key. He's not in his room. Oh, geez. I think I'm going to have to turn this car around and go on a search for Sam. Well, I say, just go, all hands on deck, just go walking around. He couldn't have gotten far. He was, 81, for God's sake. Well, sure. And the hotel was tied into this decrepit mall. It was all burned down and torn down. And it wasn't really a cool place to hang out. Well, they did go searching for him. And indeed, he had gotten about 1,000 yards away, all dressed to the T's, had his red suit on, had his cane. And this was before he even needed the cane. This was a show cane, was sitting on this bench that probably 30 years earlier was a bus, waiting for a bus bench, just sitting there, I don't know what he was hoping to do, but they could see him from, miles away. So Corky and Holly gathered him up and he said, he was just trying to get some fresh air.
Well, we're glad you found him, and we're glad that we got to meet him. And we're really appreciative of all the great music and good deeds he did. And may he rest in peace. And we want to thank you, John Anderson, for coming on and sharing some memories. People should check out the film Sam Lay Bluesland.
Sam Lay in Bluesland. Yes, and go to my website. This is andersonproductions.com if you want to see what I'm up to.
Great. Thanks a lot for coming on, brother.
Thank you.
You are listening to Live from the Heartland show. You may be watching it. We are on a lot of different ways. We are going to take you out with the trailer from John Anderson's film on Sam Lay. And if that doesn't work, we'll be playing another Sam Lay tune. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the people on the Live from the Heartland team. Certainly my co-host, Katy Hogan, who is down there in Cancun, and Luis Mejia Arens, who is over there in Veracruz, thinking about maybe coming back to Chicago. Thank you, Lynn Orman, for hooking us up, Lynn Orman Weiss, for hooking us up with all kind of great music, Gwen Brown, and all the wonderful people at WLUW, and our newest member of the team, Emilio Davis. You want to show your face, Emilio, and give us a wave? Anyhow, we tell you all at the end of the show to there he is, give him a wave. Here's a guy who has some technical skills. He likes to write, he knows music, and we're looking forward to having you around, brother. And thank you again to Luis for coming on too. We encourage you all to do good in the world. The world needs all the good that we do. All power to the people. We'll see you next week.